for Gary Coulton there. Hey, how are you, Gary?
I'm pretty good, actually. Yeah, it's been a good week.
Good.
I should ask you, how was your anniversary?
Oh, excellent. Yes, on Monday, May the 4th. It's an easy one for me to remember.
Yeah.
May the 4th be with us. And yeah, it was great. I discovered a new beach, had a lovely time, beautiful, kind weather. And yes, we went as a whole family actually to a new beach that we found another fantastic day.
It looked fantastic on the video you sent me.
Yes, I sent you a little video, didn't I, of our secret beach?
Wonderful. Yeah, not jealous at all.
Well, I'll take you there next time you come and see me. So how are you today and what's going on? What's happening with the Positive Echo podcast today? We've got a great guest.
We have got an amazing guest, Jane Barratt. We're very, very lucky and privileged to have her with us this afternoon. I mean, a lot of things we've talked about in the past have related to aging, but they tended to be very personal views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is going to take a more global look at aging and how it should happen, not necessarily how it is happening. But Jane's going to educate us, and we'll sit basking in her knowledge. One thing I'd like to start with, though, is a little snippet I found today, which is to quote, by 2030, 4 years away, 1/6 of the adults on the planet will be older than 60 years. 1/6. And almost a half of the adults will be over 50.
That's quite an extraordinary.
And we're not really planning for it. We're not designing.
Of course we're not.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, Jane, I imagine Jane will have a view or two.
Yeah, I'm sure she will.
Bob's ready. This looks interesting, says Bob, for sure. I was just journaling today about my mindset difference between being 72 years old in a month and actually having, this is a different way of looking at it, isn't it? Having 72 years for him is 50 years of age plus 22 years of experience. So there are different ways of looking at this.
Yeah.
It's our great pleasure to welcome Jane to help us with some extra and wise and interesting views on the subject matter. Forgive the raucous applause, Jane. Good afternoon.
Look, I'll accept it. Thanks very much, Carl, and it's great to be with you today.
Yeah,
lovely to see you here, Jane. And it's always, the backstory is always fascinating to find out how Gary found you, such that you would be kind enough to be with us this afternoon.
Well, as usual, it seems to be usual, we discovered each other on Substack, and it was through a group called Advantages of Age that I got more and more posts from people who were invested in the study of age, helping people get through their advancing years. And it struck me that most of them were about the individual experience of what it is to age, either the mental experience or the physical. And I came across Jane's writing because it's much broader than that. And her outlook on life and the challenges of aging are more global. And I thought we have to have this view on the podcast. Hopefully, in the end, we'll have a more positive view of aging at the global level. But we're going to learn this afternoon. That's why I'm here, and also enjoy the conversation. So that's how we met up.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, Jane. I know Gary's got a lot of questions. Can I jump straight in, Gary? Will that break your flow? How did you get into this work, Jane? I mean, presumably this isn't one of those career options, generally speaking, is it? When you're a little girl sitting on your bed thinking what you're going to be, being an authority on aging might not have been one of them. How did you get into this ultimately?
Oh no. I mean, nobody. Oh no. Look, let's be real. I mean, nobody says, "Woohoo! Let's study aging." No, look, but it's not. I grew up in a family in a place called Perth, Western Australia, one of the most isolated cities in the world.
Right.
And my brother Paul had a profound disability, from birth. And so I was in the role of caregiving, and I've written a little bit about that in the Substack. But that caregiving kind of took me into other places, and I started to become very curious. about aged care.
Mhm.
So in my earlier career, I spent time managing aged care facilities, looking into policy. But then when I took the job as Secretary General for International Federation on Aging, then it just opened up a whole window of opportunities to learn and be connected, globally. So, no, you're right, Carl. I didn't wake up and go, woohoo. I think there was something, Carl, that said to me, I don't want to talk about older people. I don't want to be older people when I was 30. But now I certainly think differently.
And the road has risen to meet your feet in a way, hasn't it? This whole, as we were growing up, we were terrified about overpopulation, and now there's a very different picture, isn't there, of population shrinkage. I don't think that's the right term, is it? But also the shifting demographic of how many more aging and older people there are in our world, which we're obviously going to be talking about today.
But isn't that incredibly exciting? We talk about the rapid global population aging, right?
Yeah.
And, it really, Europe, has grown older and it's been rich at the same time. Whereas if we think about the global south, then it's growing older, but it's not rich. And so you're seeing this disparity around the world. But when we talk about population aging and the average life expectancy, I say celebrate. Celebrate because of the medical advancements. But we often say, I see in the literature, it's poorly understood. I refute that. We have a lot of data around growing older, but we look at it through the wrong lens. And I'll explain that. We look at it through the health lens. Oh, the burden of older people, right? Yep. We look at through the social lens. Oh, loneliness, despair, burden. What I'm here for, and also for Gary and you, is flipping it. The glass half full kind of ideology, because I truly believe that aging will reveal the moral design of our society.
Ooh.
The way.
Sorry to interject. That's so exciting.
But that's what we're dealing with, and that's what I write about, and that's what I'm passionate about. Because for the last 25 years, 30 years, I've been at the forefront of development of policy and bringing stakeholders together, talking with governments, working with WHO. So I can now sit back and go, well, what we were doing then is not where we are now. And so I think we need to really, I don't say change the narrative or reframe, because we've used those words. We actually need to move into action.
Very, very good. How exciting. Because I must admit, I've just fallen for the narrative. I've been hypnotized, as most people have been. I've been hypnotized and brainwashed as having this as a problem, the world's growing, aging population, and it's a problem to be solved. And there aren't many other lenses through which to view that on offer, are there? It's just constantly paraded out as a problem, as something we either are talking about as a problem or not talking about at all. So it's brilliant to have you here today to talk about that. Sorry, Gary, that was a massive interruption.
This is how we roll, As ideas and thoughts come to us, we ask questions. We've got a few things that I'd like to have as kind of springboards. And I read your about on Substack, and it describes that the arc of aging, your Substack, is written for you, someone who shapes how societies age, aimed at policymakers, advisors, advocates, and institutional leaders who understand the cost of delay. And your writing translates complexity into clarity. It surely does. I recommend it. Making the invisible visible, naming what is uncomfortable, and acting on what matters. So there's a few things to unpack there. It's surely a complex issue, but does it have to be?
No, it doesn't have to be. But Gary, none of us like to sit in discomfort.
No.
None of us like to name what's actually happening in front of us. And, I'll give you just one story, my Substack today, and it's about menopause. And it's not about menopause, the symptoms. It's about the fact that we do not have international classification codes, diagnostic codes for menopause symptoms. Now, why should that matter? Well, over half the population, more than half the population are women. We all experience it. But if a woman goes to the doctor today and talks about the symptoms that are actually going to make her leave work early. So we're seeing that women are leaving work early in their career because of the symptoms and because they haven't been recognised and managed. Now, that is a design fault. If we had the ICD codes, then they would be healthcare professionals would be educated, women would be managed and treated, the symptoms, and they would remain in the workforce. So it's an economic driver. The same could be said around people who decide to leave the paid job when they're 60 or 65. And note that I didn't use the word retire because there's no such thing as retire. But this is a person that's got decades of experience, mentorship programs. So, I think we have to sit with this discomfort of how the structural systems prevent a person in their later life being who they want to be. And so that's really what I'm talking about, this discomfort and naming, what we need to do.
To me, as it's what you described as an example of what I would call searching for the positive opposites of things. So you've got the blame associated with women who happen to have inevitable menopause, but they get blamed for the symptoms they experience because medicine is mostly aimed at treating men. It comes so far down the pecking order. And the consequence, as you say, is really a constraint on the economy. That's one positive opposite, is to turn it on its head.
Very much so. But also we need to also shift and think we've got an increase in elder suicide in men.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And so we've got to look at aging through a gender perspective, a gender lens, as well as a cultural lens.
Yeah.
So your first question was, does it need to be so complicated? No, it doesn't.
No.
But we have to really understand what we're looking at and responding to.
One thing you've touched on there implicitly is, this observation of increased suicide in older men. I'll only ever speak for my own. For me, as a member of the male gender, put it that way, I'm very careful about who I generalize. But I know that if I no longer had a purpose, something I could do for other people, I'd probably go downhill pretty quickly. And we've had this conversation before, Carl, about, it seems to me that nature imbued us all with the capacity to be wise. But society kind of programs that belief out of us. And as we get older, we have the combination of that innate capacity and experience. Using that, as you mentioned earlier, mentoring, that gives men a purpose. So can we flip these inherited concepts on their heads and do something global?
Yeah, and we do. But it's very patchy, Gary, and it's very culturally driven.
Yeah.
So if you think about the Okinawa study, it's a one of the most profound longevity studies in existence. And there's something called ikigai. And it's about purpose, it's about worth, it's about community. And if you look at different cultural groups, the elder is revered. They have a place in society. they don't have to think, what is my purpose? It's inherently known through the cultural and the moral values of faith and culture. But in some parts of the world, in I can say North America, that purpose seems to have to come from within, and it's not necessarily a self-responsibility, because healthy aging is about the interaction between the person and their environment. So what we talk about is creating an environment that enables a person to do what they have reason to value.
Correct. Yeah, I like that.
Right? And that's really, it's this interaction. And so environment plays a vital role. This podcast is an environment that is enabling. And that's, that is your worth and Carl's worth in creating this platform.
Yeah, we hope so. We absolutely hope so. And it resonates with what I think you've described yourself as, in a way, as the champion of the awkward conversation, to keep that context there, to face these things rather than write them off in sound bites or just, our usual way. So, because you're a big picture sort of top level person with this, aren't you, Jane? Speaking globally, talking to people globally. Presumably part of this is finding the best practice like Okinawa and then sharing that with people who have a need around the world. So what are some of the examples where this is happening? Because it's so dear to us, isn't it, Gary? The idea that there is wisdom in aging potentially, and it is a gift if it's known and directed. But that's become such an overshadowed and occult matter at the moment, isn't it? And also, I think, older people may have some responsibility in that because they've bought the idea, haven't they, that they are not worth very much or are disappearing into oblivion, rather than saying, hold on a minute, we've got a lot to give here and you need to hear it. That's been part of it as well. So is that what you do? Do you bring together best practice and endeavor to share that wherever you go?
It's a great question. And what I can say is that I go from global to local and local to global.
Right.
So we have a lot of data, but data does not change policy, right? I mean, people sort of have this myth that, if we have all the evidence, well, then we've got it. That's not the case. So I actually really pull on stories about you and me, about, my family, the people that I've met. And a good story about half glass full is Olive Bryanton. Olive Bryanton did her PhD when she was 86. She lives in a small place in Prince Edward Island. Olive Bryant, in her PhD, she interviewed older women around her kitchen table. Now, from that place, Olive made remarks at the WHO, talking about her work within the context of big picture. So, my position is, without the stories, without the reality of being human, policy is not going to be effective. And policy can be written, but we're a long way short of implementation of policy, and it impacting, people. So I kind of sit on both ends of the spectrum.
Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love that. I love that dynamic. And you've got your work cut out, obviously, in that quest.
We all have. You're doing it today. Gary does it with his Substack. And, I like the idea of, stepping out of personal into the environment and what that means. And, Gary, you put on Substack or LinkedIn today about ageism, and that's a big ticket item when we talk about the world and how are we going to manage that, because we haven't been very good with racism and sexism, to be honest. We haven't kind of, it hasn't been a slam dunk. And I think we've got to look at ageism in a very different way now.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
to what degree do you feel that the isms, ageism, come from a fear of one group, usually in a position of power, the fear of other? So with older people, younger people fear getting old. So as I've got older, I'll be 70 in October, I feel like I'm a different species. And I'm either looked at differently or I'm just not looked at.
You know, what a lovely kind of picture. We talk about invisibility, don't we?
Yeah.
But the study by WHO on ageism actually indicated that younger people feel as they're more discriminated on the basis of age than older people, right?
Yeah.
So it's a generational. But there's three kinds of ageism, and it speaks to your question. There's self-identifying, right? There's interpersonal, and there's institutional, right? So if we break that all down very quickly, we are all self-deprecating and self-identifying at times. It's whether ageism impacts our ability to fully function in the world that's critical. So if I escalate to the institutional, this is where I sit with the most discomfort. And I'm going to be a little bit disruptive here and say, in my lifetime, structural ageism will not be eliminated.
No,
and I'll tell you why.
Right.
Because, our systems, we have, pensions here, health promotion here, and they don't talk to one another, right? So a person actually gets stuck in one system, and if they move to the next one, they're not known. So we're seen as episodes of care rather than whole people.
Wow.
And because of that, it will always be like it is. So we have to think very differently, because the design actually prohibits, older people being seen as a person with a history of many years, but also contributions to be made at every moment in that time. So, that's how I'm seeing ageism now. So the other isms are just sitting alongside it, Gary.
It becomes self-defining and self-defeating, doesn't it, when seen in that sort of ideological way? How hopeful are you that the solutions and freedom that we're looking for here in this conversation will be delivered by institutions, organizations, and the sort of corporate level of life, or will it be a groundswell, grassroots thing that elders will just have to bring about themselves, or will it be a bit of both?
Do you know what? You've got the hypothesis of my book, which I'm finally finishing. but I can tell you from my perspective,
right?
It will not come from institutions.
I don't think so.
And I believe that what is happening in community now is the basis of the counterforce to ageism.
Yeah.
So if we look at faith and culture, there is very good evidence, that the Maori culture, the Aboriginal culture, the Inuit, there is a basis for the respect of older people. So it's there, right? If we look at the work around, age-friendly cities and communities or naturally occurring retirement, so there is place. I talked about the person and the environment. So there's place. So I can give you many examples of where this counterforce is actually sitting. But we are depending on structures to change when in fact structures are there because they actually control the economy.
Yes.
And because of that, we actually need to shift and thinking about the older people being economic drivers.
Yes.
And we see that in China. They are estimating $23 trillion in the silver economy. And the silver economy talks about older people. So they are redesigning their transportation system. You know, technology is a powerful driver, and older people are one of the consumers.
Incredible. So yeah, you make that less of a problem and more of a customer, if that's the kind of culture you operate in, which makes complete sense, doesn't it? And strangely enough, it's like we're all, the way you're speaking, to me anyway, to my ears, just sounds like, you know, it's funny because we're a lot of us are boomers and Gen Xers, and it's like we are the counterculture that can happen rather than asking for permission. It's like it's that matter, isn't it, of asking for forgiveness rather than permission, I think, for our generations to make this change. And if you say to a politician, you know, well, the Native American people and the Inuit people are very well treated, and they'll go, oh, that's very nice. Yes, we really should do that. And then they do nothing about it. But if we say that to each other, we might inspire each other to be like that, right? Rather than waiting for the permission and the enabling from the system.
I don't have time to wait for permission.
Absolutely.
You know, I am the change. You are the change.
Right. Yes.
You know, I mean, Gary's not waiting for permission. You know, you are the change, and that's what I certainly testify, you know, in what I'm doing in the latter part of my life.
Fantastic.
There's echoes of a previous guest, Jessica Friday, and the idea of community-based economies. Linked to community-based economy with an aging autonomy. Now you've got an engine for change, because you end up being independent of the tech bros, frankly, and the billionaires and multimedia, because you come below their radar. I mean, we're not a particularly political podcast, but we're a kind of socio-political podcast. And I've always been interested in how to connect brilliant ideas and processes coming from different directions. And it seemed to me that's a natural interaction, is community-based economies with autonomous aging population.
Yeah, but you could also extend it and take out the autonomous. What you're talking about is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. And these these ecosystems, are diverse and inclusive and culturally accommodating. And it's this humanness that is the counterforce. And so I think that, what you've talked about there, is the basis of ecosystems that exist, but we may name them differently.
Yeah. And in whose interest, you don't need to name names, I've kind of alluded to some of them, in whose interest would this be to suppress? Because at the moment, it feels like all these advances in age and the relationship with age are actually being actively suppressed somehow.
It's interesting. Not in my world.
No.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think some of it, and I can be in that world if I let myself, right? But I'm very conscious that I'm not 30 and I'm not 40 and I'm not 50, and so I have a very clear focus with the information and the thought process that I have, that I use it to the benefit of others. And that is to create the opportunities to have important dialogues that may shift one person's thinking. That's all.
Cool.
Because what we've got to do is be part of that change.
Yeah. It feels like a kind of potential for a crowdsourcing approach. That if you equip enough people who think like you, and perhaps like us, with the tools to spread the good word, it will reach that Malcolm Gladwell tipping point, and it will have its own energy.
Yes, it has the feel of a movement, doesn't it? I mean, that's what's required, isn't it? For social change. I think movements are the most effective thing ultimately, because it's ideas that are finding their feet on the ground rather than just endless doing and froing between electorates and their supposed leaders, like social movements. This has the feel. I mean, maybe it's happening already, Jane. I don't know, but do you get a sense of an elder global social movement?
There is certainly movement. I mean, from a rights-based perspective, we know that member states, countries are drafting, the development of a UN Convention on the Rights of Older People. Now, that's at a political level. My thought, though, is that we are change agents, and what we don't do well is come together, in ways that connect our expertise, and so that is the community, and that is the social change.
Yeah.
So how do we strengthen that?
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to be thinking about. I'm way past awareness campaigns around ageism, etc. Awareness doesn't change.
Right.
Awareness may change, but the action for change doesn't happen.
Well
so,
said.
at the center of this, it's self-identifying ageism. I'm X age, so perhaps I shouldn't be doing that. So I think there's something there. But also, I live in the entitled boat. I have a house. I have loved ones. I have, money. I have, so, and I'm very conscious of that. Someone next door, may not be able to pay their electricity, their water, etc. So we need to come to grips with the uncomfortable knowledge that there are people in this cohort in the latter half of life that actually community may be the only thing that keeps them above water.
Yeah.
So we have a primary responsibility in that.
Yeah, amazing. This is on that matter of internalized ageism. Bob's here. Gary, I asked myself if I'm bringing that perspective to myself, that I'm now old and invisible, or if that is the view actually towards me. It's not my view of you, Bob, and I'm sure it's not of many other people. But it's an understandable thing that happens for sure. I don't mean to be unkind or not understanding what Bob's saying there, but he makes a very interesting distinction, I think.
And Gary.
We had a guest, Michelle Minikin, I think it was her first guest actually, and she has a book called Good Girl Deprogramming, and it's about the idea that girls and women are programmed to behave in certain ways by society, mostly the patriarchal society that's been there for 2,000 plus years. And she said, if you're programmed and you recognize how you're programmed, you should be able to deprogram yourself. It's the same for neurodivergent people. I identified at 65. When I look back, I was programmed to believe there was something not quite right, when absolutely that's not the case. And I think we're gradually programmed throughout life, through our families, the media, films, to visualize older people as certain things that become of less and less value. And my hope is that I can contribute to turning that around and show people how to deprogram themselves.
Yeah, hell yeah.
In certain ways, it might not be totally, but there's a certain freedom comes with, I can manage my internal narrative about getting older, and I don't have to bloody stand for it.
Yes, well said. One of the mottos of this movement, perhaps, like, I don't have time for this shit. Pardon my French. That could be a driver, couldn't it? I mean, you do get to a certain age where you think, I just don't have time for this nonsense, and so you do something about it. That's an incredible catalyst, I think.
And my question would be, if that's a shared feeling, how do we coalesce that into a local group feeling, or helping your neighbor to feel differently, etc., and really ignore what happens almost at the political level, because that's not going to help us.
Look, Gary, what I've seen and what I know of you, that's what you're doing now. You know, and this podcast, you know, grows and extends the opportunity to be who you are and to fight your own demons about self-identifying ageism. But you are right that it starts very early on. I don't know whether you have signs in the UK, you know, the triangle sign of the watch the old people because there's a crossing. It's a very universal, and that's not the case. So it really is about at every moment questioning, asking, stopping, as you would have done in your 30s, 40s, 50s. You know, and I just want to, I don't know the gentleman's name who put the question forward. You know, there's a difference between being older and being invisible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think absolutely you can feel invisible because the world doesn't recognize who you are. And there is some self-responsibility about this is who I am. And it's easier to do that with others around you.
Yeah.
And great question from how much do doctors and drug companies program people?
They wouldn't do that.
I think that's beyond the scope of my understanding, but I would say no, and no. But that's my own personal opinion.
Okay, fair enough. I want to. This might seem a strange tangent, but it's really, I think, a good reflection of what we're talking about. I've taken it upon myself to start a 50+ AI community. I'm 60, but I think that you know the sign you mentioned, the road sign with an old person, a couple, one of them has a walking stick. When I was younger, I thought that was for, you know, that was identifying anyone 50 and over, probably 40 and over when I was really young. And it's amazing how that's changed in our lifetimes. You know how much fitter and weller and different people are in old age. And this AI thing is so interesting because it brings with it all that we're talking about, Jane. I don't know if you agree. It's like, oh, AI is going to be so nice for those poor, lonely old people who can talk to a machine now. It's like, Jesus, God, it must have more in it than that to enable and empower people. So yeah, if you're the victimized, you know, if you've been ageisted, as it were, and you're that sort of feeble old person, you're going to get a patronizing Alexa to keep you company that's going to be prescribed or something like that in a terrible world. Or it's going to be like, my God, this AI technology is so incredible. It could really turbocharge all of us old giffers into doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. Patronizing behavior doesn't help anyone at any age. But I would also ask, if we took the word age out of this conversation, would it be any different? And I think it's almost as if we've got to have the conversation. All right, Carl, you're doing an AI over 50. And it's not about age. It's about learning new skills. And it's about, regardless of the chronological age, we all know people who are 40 and not healthy and not well. And we also know people who are 80 who are out there and in the community. So it's about healthy aging and functional ability rather than the age. But I'm with you. I'm ready to join your AI over 50s.
Thank you. That's fantastic.
One caveat. As an ex career biologist, nature stops using energy when there's no demand for it. So recent studies from MIT, etc., are showing severe cognitive reduction in young people who have developed an obsession, an addiction to AI. So if that is a similar level of effect in older people whose cognition is already somewhat failing, it may amplify some of our issues.
Oh God, yeah, definitely.
In a different way, for example, my late mother-in-law was losing nouns from about the age of 55, something like that.
Losing nouns.
Nouns, they're always the first thing to go.
Okay.
So a thingy-majig, a what's it?
Yeah.
And particularly when you're trying to vocalize. not finding the right words.
Mhm.
AI might be useful for helping people in real time find the word they want.
Yes.
Because of the context of the sentence. There's all sorts of good things, but just to rely on it completely.
It depends what you put value on, doesn't it? Because people would say that about a car. You know, it made people unfit because they kept using their cars. I mean, all of these things. Well, it's true, but all of these things are tools that we can. You know, we need some sort of discernment when we're using them, and there's incredible potential available, and yes, and some terrible pitfalls at the same time. I think, Jane, what I would love to hear is more of the sort of case study and the call to action. I mean, that's what we're coming to, isn't it? Is about how this is a ground up. We need to be doing this for ourselves. Fine if the governments are going to help and the big global institutions are going to help. That's all good, but it's going to be coming from ourselves, self-starting. What's your advice, push, call to action from that point of view?
Yeah, look, Carl, fundamentally, we have to look at our own individual.
Yeah.
And I think to maintain our health and well-being, we've got to be very diligent about, health tests, prevention, promotion, all of those things, right? Because that's within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also know from studies that, the social network that you create also gives you not only added value, but that's very important for your cognition and also your socialization and being positively aging. I think the bigger questions are really about how we engage in community, and community being the counterforce. And this, Gary, this podcast is one of your contributions to not only you, but the community. And as Carl has introduced, the AI over 50. So it's about making the connections. What I'm really studying and writing about is how do we make sure that we build continuity across our life? So we're just not known as the episode, but we actually build connections. And that connection is community, and that is the counterforce to ageism and to improving our health and well-being.
Fantastic. I thought that was amazing when you identified a way of describing people as episodes, a health episode, or because that's what we can tend to do, isn't it? And that's what's happening so much in our polarized age. That's the vocabulary of all of that, isn't it? Is that it's episodic rather than a process and a continuation, and it misses all the rich context from which we come and in which we exist. That's wonderful, Jen. I really want to put onto the screen your Substack because I love that as well. And it's like you issue a lot of positive age-related haikus on your notes. You're a brilliant note user on Substack. I love these. They are like little poems here, aren't they, or haikus?
Yeah, thank you.
Thoughts. I think they're wonderful. And of course, as you mentioned, your visible uncounted post as of today, 4 hours ago, about menopause, and that is Arc of Aging, Jane Barratt's Substack over there. And I thank you for being here today. We do have an extra item, don't we, Gary, that we like to finish with. But is there anything else you want to ask Jane? I don't want to conclude prematurely, or Jane deprive you of saying anything else you wanted to say.
Look, I'll just go back to what I said to start with, Gary, and aging will reveal the moral design of our society, here and going forward. So we have to claim the responsibility and move forward to be the change agent. But thank you for asking me here. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
And we always, if somebody has a book in the pipeline or has a book, it's only our pleasure to plug it. So what have you got a title yet?
No, it'll be a secret, but it would be a great honor to come back and talk with you about it, because this is the basis of what I've shared with you today.
And it's that building momentum as well. We've always said to our guests, we want you to come back at a time when a major change has happened, an advance. So we'll get you in the diary.
Yeah,
good. Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, we've got our own finally now. I think this is what you're sharing today, Gary. Is that right?
Jane gave it a quick plug beforehand. It's on BBC Futures. I'm just going to make it full screen so I can see it. It's this idea of aging and ageism and positive attitudes to it. And it's a piece that isn't simply about gung-ho, affirmations into the mirror, that kind of thing. It's what is it that a really positive attitude can help with. And sometimes it's recognizing when you're not having a positive attitude and what stops you. So if I remember correctly, there's a piece in it about stereotype threat.
Yeah.
It's the programming thing. So the classic experiment in stereotype threat was looking at black college entrants versus white and their end qualification, what grade they got. You may not be surprised that at this particular college, it was the black boys that ended up with a systemically lower result. Unless they had a seminar on day one from a black graduate who had done well and told them they could do well despite the brickbats that they would receive during those 3 years socially.
Mm-hmm.
The following year, that group actually became more successful than their white colleagues. And what it told the researchers was that these black boys had entered college already programmed to believe they weren't worthy, even though they came in with the same high school qualifications. So with aging, it's this thing as we are programmed to feel old. And yes, we have creaky joints, and yes, stuff gets in our way and we lose friends and so on. But generally speaking, life is good.
Yes.
It's ridiculous that life exists in any case. All life is ridiculous. So if we have a certain sense of humor about our existence, we can look forward more positively to the days that we age. And that's pretty much what it's about.
Fantastic. I feel the need to go. Thank you, Gary, for that. And the link for it is on the screen now. I want to finish with the last word from Jane. If I may read, Jane, from your Substack. I'm interested in honest aging. This sums up what our conversation, I think, today. The kind that admits fear, the kind that still makes room for wonder. A direct quote from Jane's Substack. Here's to much wonder and this conversation. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Gary. Thank you for watching as well. And we hope to speak to Jane again soon when the book is published. Cheers, Jane. Thanks, Gary. Bye for now.
Thanks.